I pulled up to the venue 15 minutes earlier than they asked me to. I wasn't on the list, but I showed up anyway, because that's what you do when you're the responsible one. You don't wait for someone to remember you. You remind them by showing up first. The gravel under my tires crackled, dry and stubborn, like the atmosphere already waiting inside. I parked near the back entrance, where the vendors were unloading crates of champagne and folding chairs. My car wasn't much. It ran, that's all. But I'd washed it that morning. The suit I wore, a little dated, but pressed. I'd even ironed the sleeves. You don't show up wrinkled, even if nobody's looking at you. I was holding a plain cloth bag, a few handwritten cards, a wrapped gift. All modest, nothing flashy. I'd stayed up until midnight deciding which paper looked best for Soraya's name. A young woman in black slacks and a headset jogged over before I made it to the side door. "You must be Cassius. You're the one organizing the parking layout, right?" I blinked. "Sorry?" She checked her clipboard. "Assigned to lot coordination, mother of the bride's request." I hesitated. Then I nodded. "Right. Of course." She smiled like it was all sorted, like I was exactly where I should be. As she walked away, I stood there a second longer than necessary. Then I straightened my back, just enough to hide the way my shoulders had dropped. "It's not about me today." That was the sentence I kept repeating as I moved cones into neat rows. It was always the fallback line whenever things veered from what I expected. Dad had his way of organizing things, by instinct, not inclusion. If it didn't look good on paper or in a picture, he moved it to the edges. I was the edge, the quiet son, the fixer, the one who didn't take up space. "You're dependable, Cass," he'd say. "Not made for showy things." That was his compliment. Soraya was the showy thing, the spotlight child. She wore it well, elegant, charming, always camera-ready. The kind of person people remembered after one handshake. As I bent down to pick up a misplaced cone, I felt something shift in my jacket pocket. I reached inside and touched the folded edge of a handkerchief, white, stitched with a C in silver thread. My grandmother gave it to me when I was 10. "Keep it close," she'd said. "Something small to remind you of who you are." I hadn't touched it in years. Near the vendor entrance, I saw a box of wedding programs stacked on a table. I reached over, curious, the kind of curiosity that's quiet, almost reluctant. I flipped open the cover, gold embossed, Soraya's name larger than Jason's. Inside, under Family of the Bride, I searched. Once, then again, I wasn't there. Not under parents, not under siblings, but there, 2 sections down, under Event Support Staff. There it was. Cassius Trammell, Parking Coordination. I let out a laugh. It caught in my throat before it could become a sound, just air. Then I folded the program and tucked it into my bag. This wasn't a mistake. It was intentional, like every other time. Once, at a family planning dinner, Soraya looked right at me and said, "Cass, we've got the visuals covered. You don't need to worry." I hadn't argued, just nodded and stayed seated as they picked linens and florals. Now I was sitting again, this time in a folding chair near the valet station, away from the reception tent, staff jackets around me. None of them asked why I wasn't inside. They assumed I belonged out here. A man in a navy suit approached with a cheerful wave. "Thanks for helping today," he said, handing me his keys. "Y'all are doing great." I nodded. Took the keys, parked the car, said nothing. Later, a child ran up, looked at me, and tilted her head. "Are you Soraya's assistant?" Another voice behind her, older woman, familiar, asked, "Uncle who?" I smiled. Forced it. I told myself, just one day, it's just one day. But it wasn't just one day. This had been building for years, and I was just now admitting it. A month ago, over dinner, Petra stirred her coffee and said, "Soraya wants a clean, presentable ceremony. You understand, right?" Silas didn't look up from his phone. "Some people just don't fit the wedding photo." Petra laughed gently and turned to me. "You're not offended, are you?" I shook my head then. Because what else do you do when the people who raised you are erasing you with a smile? That night, I thought about all the mornings I drove Soraya to high school in my rusted Ford while she curled her hair in the passenger mirror. Prom night, she got a limo. My name wasn't in the thank you speech. Now, at 34, I was still driving behind her, just farther away. The wedding photographer called out names: parents, bridal party, close family. I walked past the photo staging area, deliberately slow, waiting for someone to say mine. No one did. So I found a patch of shade under a pine tree, where the ceremony was about to begin. The guests applauded as Soraya appeared at the top of the steps, veil shining like a halo. I watched from the edge, holding the keys to a car I didn't drive, and gripping a folded piece of stitched cloth in my pocket like it was the only thing I still owned. They gave her the spotlight. I got a clipboard. It was late afternoon when I found the wedding programs. They were stacked neatly on a table behind the reception tent, right beside the floral centerpieces still waiting to be moved. I wasn't looking for trouble, just wanted a peek. Curiosity more than anything. I flipped one open. Under Family of the Bride, I searched for my name. First once, then again, it wasn't there. Instead, further down the page, under Support Staff, I found it. Cassius Trammell, Parking Coordination. I stood there holding the program like it weighed something. My name was printed, just not where it should have been. And I remembered, back in middle school, Soraya once wrote an essay called My Hero. She named our father, talked about his drive, his ambition, his sense of order. I drove her to school every day that year. She never mentioned that part. I folded the paper, slid it into my inside jacket pocket. No one saw. No one would have cared if they had. Around 4:15, I stepped away for a break. My phone buzzed with a missed call from the credit union. I dialed voicemail. Hello, Mr. Trammell. This is Lauren from Inland Northwest Federal Credit Union. We're just calling to confirm a recent transfer of $300,000 from your joint account ending in 1379 to an external trust titled under Soraya Morad. Please call us back if this was not authorized. I didn't sit. I didn't move. Just stared at the phone like it might apologize. I opened the banking app. $0,000. Transaction complete. Beneficiary, Soraya Morad Trust. First came the silence. Then came the shaking. I called my mother. No answer. I texted. Did you authorize this? 20 minutes later, she replied. Sweetheart, it's all for the family. Don't worry. We'll talk later. They took it, quietly, just like they took everything else. That night, I sat on the edge of the motel bed with receipts scattered across the comforter. Gas money, pay stubs, rent checks, 10 years of sacrifice printed in fading ink. I'd skipped vacations, chose frozen dinners instead of delivery, wore shoes down to the stitching before replacing them. I wasn't careless with money. They were careless with me. I pulled out the wedding program again. My name still wasn't in the family list, still tucked under Support Staff. And now it was missing from the account I'd built, just like that. The door buzzed, a food delivery I barely remembered ordering. I let it sit outside until the driver left, then brought it in untouched. At 10:12 p.m., I called Soraya. She answered on the second ring. Hey, you're gonna love the rooftop garden, she said, breathless. It overlooks the river. It's so dreamy. I waited. She kept going. You'll be near the back, but don't take it personally, okay? The front tables are for people Jason's folks know, and obviously family. Did you know about the transfer? I asked. There was a pause. Then, Dad said you'd understand. I mean, you're not using it, right? I didn't answer. She continued, soft like she was doing me a favor. You always told me you didn't need much. And this? It's everything to me. At 11:03 p.m., I left the motel room and walked to the 24-hour grocery store down the road. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. I stood in front of the coolers, holding a bottle of water I didn't want. My phone was still in my hand, screen lit with the banking app. $0. Account closed. I set the water back on the shelf. Let the automatic doors slide open. Outside, the night air wasn't cold, but it bit harder than usual. When people steal from strangers, they go to jail. When they steal from you for love, they expect you to smile. I didn't plan on looking at the display board. It was set up right at the walkway to the reception tent, so avoiding it would have taken more effort than glancing. There were photos from the engagement shoot, childhood candids of Soraya, even high school prom moments. Enlarged, framed, floral borders. In the center, her bridal portraits, soft lighting, veil fluttering in the breeze. Not one image had me in it. I stood there long enough for a guest to approach. She smiled, holding a glass of white wine, and said, "You must be one of Jason's cousins. Just arrived?" I nodded. It felt easier than correcting her. "It's so sweet of you to help out like this," she added. I stepped aside and gave her room to look. On the poster below Soraya's largest photo were the words, "Family means forever." I turned away before I could feel too much, but I felt it anyway. Later, while I sat behind the vendor tent, I opened my phone to scroll mindlessly, anything to distract. Soraya's best friend had just posted a story, "Dress day with my girl, memories we'll never forget." 10 women in robes, glasses of champagne in hand, laughing, pointing at racks of dresses. Soraya in the center, Petra off to the side, still beaming. They hadn't told me, not a word. I remembered when Soraya was 14 and her prom dress zipper split 20 minutes before her ride arrived. I used duct tape and safety pins to fix it while she sobbed in the bathroom. She danced all night in that dress. But this moment, I wasn't even worth the text invite. I called Elio because I needed to hear something outside of my own thoughts. He answered on the second ring. "Bad timing?" he asked. "No, just needed air." I told him about the photo board, the dress party, the stranger who thought I was a cousin. He didn't interrupt. When I paused, he said, "You keep waiting for them to see you. What if they only see what you give?" I didn't say anything for a few seconds. Then I said, "Maybe that's my fault. I made it too easy to forget me." He was quiet. "So what now?" It was the right question. I just didn't have an answer. Around dusk, the staff began arranging the wedding day family photo shoot. I lingered near the edge, watching them set up lights, tripods, and chairs. One of the coordinators looked at me, then glanced down at her clipboard. "Excuse me, sir. Could you step to the side? You're not on this list." Petra was nearby. She heard. She looked at me but didn't speak for a beat. Then she smiled, tight-lipped. "Sweetheart, it's a big production. Don't complicate things." That line stuck to the back of my teeth like bad gum. I stepped back, far enough to be out of frame. As they posed in matching blues and silvers, I stayed behind the hedge, watched as the photographer directed them like models. "Turn your shoulder a bit. That's perfect. Yes, just like that." The camera flash reflected on their smiles. On Petra's pearls. On Silas's polished cufflinks. But it didn't touch me. Not even by accident. Back at the motel, I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling fan. One blade made a soft clicking noise every third rotation. In my mind, I placed myself into that photo. I'd be the shadow in the back, blurred, too far out of focus to recognize. When they cut you from the picture, they don't just forget your face. They erase your future. I sat up and opened my suitcase, not for clothes. I pulled out the file folder I'd packed quietly 3 days ago, before I even knew why I grabbed it. Inside were the documents Silas had once told me to sign. Financial papers, agreements, deeds. I flipped to the second folder. My name was there, still printed, still legal. They can erase me from pictures. They can't erase what I've built. The group chat disappeared sometime between lunch and late afternoon. I only noticed because I hadn't seen any updates on the rehearsal dinner, and Soraya loved updates. Color-coded ones, bullet points, long-winded excitement about floral runners. I opened my phone, searched the chat by name, nothing. Checked archived threads, still nothing. I texted Petra. "Did the wedding group move to a new thread?" She replied, "No, sweetheart. Soraya thought it was getting too noisy. She needed to trim a few. Trim. Like I was a line of fat on a cut of meat." An hour later, a guy from work, Mark, sent me a screenshot. "Thought I saw you on this earlier. Guess not?" I lied. "Yeah, stepped back voluntarily. Too much chaos." He sent a thumbs up. That was the end of that. No fight. No confrontation. Just a quiet removal, like a scab picked clean off. They don't shove you out with noise. They ease you out with polite phrases and closed doors. That evening, Petra called to invite me over for dinner. Just a casual thing, she said. Not everything's about wedding drama. I showed up in jeans and a button-down. She had set the table for 3, candle lit, wine chilled. Silas carved the roast. Petra handed out plates like nothing had shifted. About halfway through dinner, she said it casually, as if it were a side dish. We're giving Soraya the lake house. It's symbolic. I set my fork down. The lake house wasn't just a property. It was a promise. Something she told me 10 years ago, when I was barely scraping by and desperate for one thing that would be mine. I looked at her and said, "What about what you promised me?" Petra smiled like I'd just asked about the weather. "You're so independent, Cass. You'll build your own legacy." Silas didn't say a word, just cut into his meat. I nodded, took another bite, swallowed it like gravel, finished dinner, thanked her. Then I left. No slammed doors. No raised voices, just a silence sharp enough to bleed. I drove back to my motel in second gear the whole way. The radio was off. My phone was face down on the seat beside me. I didn't go inside right away. Parked outside the lot, let the engine cool down before I moved. I sat there for over 20 minutes. One thought circled back again and again. When you're good at being fine, no one asks if you're okay. This wasn't about a house. It was about everything before the house. College fund. Soraya needs it more. The car I helped fix for months, given to her as a graduation gift. The job lead Silas once promised to connect me with. He gave the contact to Jason. It was always her. I was just the extra drawer they kept things in until they found somewhere better. They didn't give her the house. They stole the promise they made to me. That night, I opened my laptop and wrote an email to both of them. It wasn't angry, just honest. I outlined the pattern. The removals, the redirections, the silences. And then I wrote, word for word, if my contributions, voice, and presence continue to be treated as optional, I will make decisions accordingly. I hit send. The next morning, Petra called. Her voice was calm, that kind of calm you use when you're already in damage control. Why would you send something so formal to your parents? I didn't raise my tone. Because apparently, I said, family is only informal when I'm giving, not when I'm asking. There was a pause, then a sigh. You're overreacting, Cass. Let it go. She hung up. I sat with her words for a while. Let them marinate. Let it go. Like I hadn't been holding on to that promise for 10 years. Later that afternoon, I pulled out the document folder again, the one Silas gave me to sign years back, saying it was just to secure better rates. My hands felt different now. Not angry, not shaking, just steady. Page 6. Right there. And something told me that wasn't the only page worth reading again. I picked up my phone and called Elio. Got a minute? I asked. For you? Always. I think I've been erased more than once, I said. There was a pause on the line. I'm listening, he said. The box was small, polished walnut with brass hinges, the kind of thing you don't find at a chain store. I'd gone out of my way to find it, backtracked through 3 shops until I landed on a little artisan boutique near downtown. Soraya once mentioned wanting one like it back in college. She'd circled it in a catalog she left on my desk. I remembered. Inside, I had a message inscribed on a small brass plate. To Soraya, may your new beginning be one you build yourself. I meant it, not out of spite, just clarity. I gave the box to Petra the night before the wedding, asked her to place it with the rest of the gifts. She smiled the way someone smiles when you hand them a pen they weren't asking for. The next day, as I passed the gift table, I saw it there, ribbons still tight, corners sharp. Only now it had a card. From Mom and Dad, with all our love. No correction, no mention, just silence. I stood there for a moment too long. Then walked away before my face betrayed anything, and suddenly, I was 10 again. Saved up for weeks to buy Mom a scarf for her birthday. She unwrapped it at dinner, smiled, looked across the table and said, Silas, you always know how to spoil me. I didn't say a word then either. 2 days before the wedding, I stopped by the house. Told Petra I wanted to grab a few books from my old room. The door was open when I got there. Mirrors leaned against the walls, racks of dresses, pink lighting, champagne bottles. My bed, gone, shelves, emptied. A couple of my old things tossed into boxes labeled Cassius, garage? A woman I didn't know glanced up from the mirror. Oh, sorry, we thought you moved out years ago. I nodded, just once. I crouched down to one of the boxes, pulled open a tin that used to hold baseball cards. Inside was a folded piece of faded paper, a Mother's Day card, crayon drawings. I love you more than cake, it said. I put the lid back on and slipped the tin into my jacket. That night, Petra asked me to come by for tea, said she wanted to thank me. Kitchen table, 2 mugs, lemon slices, small talk. She smiled across the rim of her cup. Thank you for being so flexible during all this. I know Soraya's big moment can take up a lot of space. I waited. Why was the card on my gift changed? I asked. She blinked like it hadn't occurred to her. You're always so thoughtful, sweetheart. We thought it would look more polished this way. More polished? Well, coming from the parents of the bride, it just reads better. You know how appearances matter, especially with Jason's side. I asked about my room, where my books went, my shelves, my posters. Petra set her cup down gently. It's a new chapter for everyone. She ended the conversation with a familiar phrase. One day, you'll understand how family sacrifices work. I smiled, a tight, even smile. Then I left. The drive back to the motel was short. I parked, didn't move. My hands stayed on the steering wheel while I looked over at the passenger seat. A box of my things sat there, half-lidded, memories peeking out. A trophy from middle school. A framed picture from a family trip we never talked about. My chest felt tight, but I wasn't crying. Not yet. Not until I blinked, and it just happened. No noise. Just water from somewhere behind my eyes. The kind of tired that doesn't come from work or sleep. The kind that comes when you finally admit no one ever planned on holding space for you in the first place. I texted Elio. I can't do this anymore. I think I'm done. His reply came faster than I expected. No, you're not done. You're just not meant to carry this alone. The next morning I pulled out the documents, the ones Silas had me sign years ago. At the time, he'd said they were routine. Just paperwork. Standard stuff. I flipped through page after page until I hit it. Page 6. Co-owner Cassius Trammell. Not just witness, not just emergency contact. Co-owner. Elio called as I was staring at it. No hello, just, I ran a background check on the filing history. That signature of yours might be the only truth they can't erase. I leaned back in the chair, hand still on the page. They can't erase what I built if I refuse to give them the pen. There was a moment 5 years ago that always felt off. I'd been home visiting after a long stretch of work travel. Silas had pulled me aside in his office, papers already laid out, pen clicked and ready. Just routine stuff, he said, helps us secure better rates, mortgage shuffle, no big deal. He waved off my questions. I signed where he pointed. I didn't read it, not fully. I trusted him. They were my parents, not strangers. Now, sitting alone in a motel room filled with stale air and the hum of a loud mini fridge, I pulled those documents back out. The folders were neatly labeled in Petra's handwriting, pristine, as always. Something inside me knew. I started at the top, flipping slowly. Each signature was mine, neat, obedient, page after page. I hit the 6th page of one set and stopped breathing for a moment. Co-title holder, Cassius Trammell. Not witness, not guarantor, owner. The next day, I met Elio at a diner near the Spokane courthouse. We took a booth by the window, sun cutting sharp angles across our table. I laid out the documents, one after another. Elio flipped through them like a surgeon reading scans. He tapped a paragraph buried at the bottom of a separate stack, dated the same day as the deed. This is a power of attorney form, he said. This doesn't authorize anything for you. It gives full control to Silas over your share. My jaw clenched. I didn't say a word. This wasn't a loan document, Cass. He used your name, built this structure on it, and made sure you couldn't claim any of it. I took the page, held it by the edges like it might burn. All this time, I thought they'd left me out. No, they'd used me to build the house, and then locked me out of it. Elio opened his laptop and pulled up the property records. The house was refinanced twice in the last 4 years, he said. Both times under your credit profile. That's how they paid for the wedding. He nodded. This wasn't just bad communication, I said. It was a system, a blueprint. I wasn't just omitted from the family narrative. I'd been used to fund it. I left the diner quietly. No rage, just something colder than that. A stillness in the spine that doesn't go away with time. That night, I drove by the house. I didn't stop, just slowed down near the curb. The lights were on. Petra's favorite pendant lamps glowed through the kitchen window. A white banner hung across the porch rail. Welcome to Soraya Jason's new beginning. Their new beginning, funded by my name. I didn't knock, didn't roll down the window. I drove to a small gas station, parked under the flickering neon, and opened my laptop in the passenger seat. Wrote out the letter, word by word, nothing emotional, no accusations, just legal facts. I stated my position as co-owner, cited the documents, listed my intention to claim full review of the title and exercise my rights. At the end, I wrote, "This is not a threat. It's a reminder that my presence on paper matters, even if it never did in your photographs." The next morning, I woke up before the sun came up, still dressed. The handkerchief from my jacket pocket was folded neatly on the nightstand. I picked it up, turned it over. Under the silver C, in faint thread, was a year. The year I started saving. The year Petra first promised, "One day, you'll have your own." I held the fabric between my fingers, tracing the stitching. That afternoon, I called a property mediator, spoke calmly, scheduled a meeting. And while she checked dates, I said softly, more to myself than her. They took my name off the guest list, but now it's printed on the title. 2 days before the wedding, I received an email with a subject line that read, "Toast confirmation, no greeting, just the time slot, 7:05 p.m., during the rehearsal dinner. 3 minutes max." Attached was a note from Petra. "Keep it simple, sweet, and supportive. It's not about you, remember?" I stared at that last part for longer than I should have. Then I closed the email. That night, I stood in front of the motel bathroom mirror, reciting the words I'd written on a single piece of ivory cardstock. It wasn't poetic, it wasn't dramatic, just a few honest lines I thought might matter. I folded the card neatly, slipped it into the inside pocket of my blazer. They wouldn't silence me with words, so they found another way. The morning of the wedding, I stayed on the edge of things. Quiet, available, invisible. No one asked where I was supposed to be. I'd stopped asking that question myself. Just before the reception started, I stood near the catering setup, sipping flat soda from a paper cup. A woman in a sequined shawl wandered over, smiled at me, and held out her empty wine glass. "You guys are doing a great job," she said. "Love the bow tie, real classic look." I took the glass, gave a polite nod. She walked off before I could say a word. Minutes later, I saw her laughing with Petra by the appetizer table. No one corrected her. They never did. The music softened as the MC stepped up to the microphone. "And now," he said, "a few words from the bride's brother." A soft spotlight landed on me. I stood, straightened my jacket, walked toward the mic. For a moment, just a moment, it felt like something would shift. I unfolded the card, cleared my throat. "Love doesn't always come from the loudest voices," I began. "Sometimes it's the quiet choices." Then static. The sound dropped out. The DJ behind me fiddled with a switch, shrugged. Music started up again, soft jazz rising as filler. I looked at Soraya. She smiled, waved like it was all fine. "Just enjoy the moment," her hand gesture said. I stood there a second too long, still holding the card. Then I walked away. No one stopped me. I returned to table 18, the furthest from the dance floor. next to a potted ficus and an unplugged speaker. The card was still in my hand, creased now, damp at the edge. I read the final line to myself, under my breath. Sometimes the loudest thing you can do is simply stand still. They knew when to cut the mic, and who would stop them? No one, not the guests, not the family, not even me, because I was already background noise. Later that night, back at the motel, I opened my laptop, pulled out the scanned documents, the deed, the co-ownership clause, the power of attorney form I hadn't read until last week. I drafted a letter addressed to the family's attorney, attached the files. My hand didn't shake. Elio messaged, "You ready?" I wrote back, "They took the mic. Now I'll take the paperwork." I closed the lid and whispered what I should have said into that dead microphone. Next time they hear from me, it'll be through a registered envelope. I mailed the letter on a Wednesday morning, certified, signature required. Didn't tell Elio. Didn't need a second voice this time. It was just me, a man walking into a post office with a folded stack of facts. No threats, no emotion, just names, dates, and one simple statement. I am co-owner, and I am initiating the sale. They wanted to silence me with formality. I answered in kind. That night, I drove past the house. Petra was in the yard watering her plants like nothing was shifting beneath her feet. She waved at a neighbor across the fence. I didn't stop. But I did whisper to myself. They tried to erase me with silence. I responded with paperwork. It felt right. Not good. Just necessary. Back at the motel, I posted the truth. No flair, no hashtags, just, they used my name to fund the dream I was never invited into. I didn't get a seat. But my credit paid for the chairs. Attached were 3 images, the deed showing my name, the transfer receipt to Soraya's trust, and a picture of the lake house with the sold banner in the background. Then I closed the app and set the phone down. Didn't take long, comments started rolling in. First, the coworkers, then church folks. A cousin I hadn't seen in 5 years posted a reaction. Some applauded the courage, others called it petty. Then came Soraya. "You ruined the happiest day of my life." That was it. One sentence. It said more about her than she intended. The next morning, my phone rang before 9 a.m. A crisp male voice came through. "Mr. Trammell, I represent Mr. and Mrs. Moorad. We're requesting an immediate removal of your public post and a formal cease and desist regarding the language used." I paused. Which part was inaccurate? There was silence on the other end. The man cleared his throat. "It's not so much the facts as it is the tone. It's damaging." I let out something that might have been a laugh. "You should have called before they used my name to get a second mortgage." The call ended soon after that. That afternoon, Petra showed up at the motel. No call, no warning, just her, in a pale blouse and pearls. She stood in the doorway, looked around like the place offended her. "You blindsided us," she said. I leaned against the desk, calm. "No, you've just never looked directly at me long enough to see what I'd do." Her eyes welled up, but not with guilt, embarrassment. "What will people say?" she whispered. I walked to the desk, picked up a copy of the letter I'd printed, and handed it to her without speaking. She took it, folded it slowly, left without closing the door behind her. The next morning, I went to the grocery store. Some people avoided eye contact. A few offered small nods. A woman I didn't recognize brushed my arm near the produce aisle. "Good for you," she said. I know what it's like. Outside, I found a note tucked under my windshield wiper. "It's okay to protect yourself, even from family." Elio called that evening. "The bank's lawyer confirmed your claim stands. They'll process the title transfer in 10 days. You good?" I stared at the ceiling. "They never thought I'd take it this far," I said. He didn't reply. "Because they never thought I believed I deserved to." The notification popped up just after breakfast. I was scrolling through emails, half awake, coffee gone cold beside me, when I saw it. An old friend from college had tagged me in a post. I tapped it open. There she was, Soraya, in full bridal glory. The caption read, "So proud of the golden child of the Murad family. Always knew you'd shine." They'd tagged me, accidentally, mistook her for me, or maybe just used my name as filler. Either way, the comment section exploded. "Cassius, you look amazing. You've always been such a light." I didn't respond, didn't correct it. I didn't even feel anger. When you're erased enough times, even your face becomes transferable. I screenshotted the post, not for evidence, just to remind myself how deeply this erasure ran. A few days later, I signed the final paperwork. The bank approved the transfer. My name, once used like scaffolding to build their dreams, was now formally relinquished. I didn't show up to the closing. Elio handled it all. He texted, "It's done." I replied, "Redirect the proceeds. Scholarship fund. Law students who lost everything and started anyway." He sent back a thumbs up emoji. Then, "You want a plaque?" I smiled for the first time in days. No, the point is, it's not about the name on the wall. It's about the next person who walks through it. Later that afternoon, I drove past the house. For the last time, the porch lights were off. The realtor's sign was up. Petra sat on the porch swing. She looked right at me. I didn't stop, and she didn't wave. That was the closest we ever came to closure. 2 days later, Soraya posted something vague on social media. "Healing is hard," she wrote. "Some of us choose destruction instead of unity." People clapped for her in the comments. Always did. The golden child could set fire to a forest and be praised for the warmth. A few mutual friends unfollowed me, quietly. No messages, no drama, just absence. Others reached out in private. "Hey, I saw the post. I just want you to know, I get it." The church released a newsletter, buried in the last paragraph. "We encourage members to handle family disagreements in a spirit of grace, not grievance." I uninstalled the app that night. Let them talk in echoes. I'm done speaking into empty rooms. A week passed. The air smelled different near the coast. Fresher, less heavy. Malis knocked on the door of my new rental. A tiny yellow house with chipping paint and a porch that creaked like an old knee. She didn't say much, just handed me a ceramic pot with a small lemon tree inside. "For your new garden," she said. We sat outside, listening to the breeze cut through tall grass. She sipped from a mug I hadn't used yet, looked out, not at me, and said, "I wish your mother had your spine." I didn't say anything. Eventually, I told her everything. Not just the facts, the in-betweens, the silences. She didn't interrupt. Just listened, then hugged me once, firm and short. "Next time someone tries to rename your story," she said, "remind them who wrote the original." That night, I opened the last moving box. At the bottom, under an old sweater and a bent picture frame, was the handkerchief. White, edged in blue, stitched with the letter C. I hadn't seen it since the day I stood in the parking lot with keys I didn't use. I held it up to the light. The thread had started to fray. I didn't fix it. I framed it instead, hung it just inside the front door. They wrote me out of their picture, but I've framed the truth, and it doesn't need permission to hang.